The knife slipped. Blood welled along my thumb, thin and precise, but I didn't flinch. The room had gone silent anyway, eerily so. Just the soft clatter of Amanda's phone dropping onto her empty plate. Her face had gone pale. My mother's smile froze mid-laugh, her wine glass hovering an inch from her lips. I sat across from them at the long, gleaming table in my parents' over-decorated dining room, crystal chandelier above us, silverware that had only ever been used for show dinners like this one. A place of performance, not family. "You didn't tell me she was that Ashley Johnson," Amanda whispered, eyes darting between her fiancé, my brother, and the screen of her phone. My brother looked confused. My mother didn't. Her eyes narrowed. That Ashley Johnson. The name on bestseller lists. The viral essays. The film option. The silence pressed down like fog rolling off Lake Erie, thick and inescapable. But let me take you back, because the story doesn't start here. It starts in the rot, under the glossy surface, where I was planted and left to grow like a weed in the manicured graveyard of Westlake, Ohio. My childhood unfolded in a cul-de-sac of perfection, Victorian mailboxes, symmetrical hedges, and beige smiles. Our house was a two-story colonial with a brick facade and wreaths that changed with the seasons. To the outside world, it was a postcard. Inside? A mausoleum for anyone who didn't meet the family standard. And I never did. Janet, my mother, curated our lives like an Instagram feed before social media existed. Her power came from her ability to make people envy her. And she wore it like perfume, strong, floral, suffocating. My father, Raymond, was a shadow with a wallet. He kept the peace by disappearing inside account ledgers and letting her reign. Jerry, my older brother, was her golden boy. He bled excellence. Trophies, titles, scholarships. They lined the walls like a shrine. You'd think he cured cancer by age 16. Me? I wrote stories about girls who talked to ghosts and lions who fell in love. I won contests. Got published. Nobody cared. I still remember that day, 8 years old, bursting into the kitchen, waving my first story like it was gold. "Look what I wrote." I grinned, holding it up. Janet didn't even turn around. "That's nice, Ashley." Put it on the counter. "We're already late for Jerry's science fair." I did. A week later I found it beneath a stack of coupons and mail, stained with a coffee ring. Unread. It never really changed. Middle school, I won a citywide writing competition. Nobody came. Jerry had a baseball game. "You understand, right?" my dad asked as I got into bed that night. "I understand," I said. I was already learning how to disappear. High school, I became editor-in-chief of the school paper. My stories got picked up in local publications. My mother's response? "Writing is fine, Ashley, but you should have a real plan. Something secure, like accounting or dental hygiene." When I got published in a national anthology, she didn't even ask to see it. Jerry's college acceptance letters, though, framed in the living room. So I stopped telling them. I picked a college in New York, the furthest place I could go without a passport, and built a life in the cracks of my silence. There, in the city's chaos and anonymity, I found people who didn't ask what my brother was doing before they asked about me. Professors who praised my voice. Editors who called me formidable. I published. I endured. I became something without their permission. When I visited home, I wore neutrality like armor. "How's school?" my mother would ask, not really caring. "Busy," I'd reply, knowing the full truth would only echo against her disinterest. Then came the night after graduation, the last time I tried to explain myself. "I'm staying in New York," I said at dinner. "I've signed with a literary agent. I'm writing full-time." Janet sipped her Chardonnay. "New York's a fantasy, Ashley. You'll be back in 6 months. Maybe you can teach creative writing at the community college when reality sets in." Dad, always the apologist, tried to soften the blow. "We just worry about you," he said. "Writing's a hard path. We don't want you to get hurt." I smiled. Because I was already hurt. Always had been. But that was before Amanda typed my name into her phone that night. Before Google shattered the illusion. Before my family had to reckon with what the invisible daughter had become. There were two of me. One wore tailored black, her name whispered in green rooms and printed in serif on dust jackets, Ashley Johnson, the writer who'd clawed her way into literary relevance. The other drifted like smoke through holiday dinners in Ohio, where she was still, our daughter Ashley, she works in publishing or something, spoken like a shrug. The dissonance was deliberate. It protected me. Every phone call home was theater. I played the quiet, responsible daughter. I listened to updates about Jerry's new promotion, my mother's charity gala, the neighbor's golden retriever's arthritis, all delivered with the conviction that these things mattered more than anything I might say. "How's work, Ashley?" my mother would ask, her tone an afterthought. "It's good," I'd reply, then pivot. "Did I hear Jerry made VP?" A skill set formed, distraction, deflection, the art of being vague enough to vanish. I became fluent in their language, one that didn't include me. People sometimes ask why I kept going back. Why bother? Why show up for people who never showed up for you? Because hope is a parasite. It doesn't die when it should. It lingers, even when logic tells you to cut it out. Some part of me, the little girl still clutching her animal story, believed one day they might see me. Not just glance past me, but really see me. So I returned twice a year to Westlake, a suburb so pristine it felt sterile, like reality had been Windexed away. I walked into that house like a ghost, familiar but faded. The table set with sterling silver, the polite small talk, the way my mother never asked a single real question about my life. But New York? New York was different. Brutal and beautiful. Alive. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and the echo of my mother's voice telling me I'd fail within 6 months. I pinned that prophecy above my bed like a dare. My first place was a crumbling walk-up in Brooklyn, shared with 2 other aspiring nobodies. My room had 1 window, a desk held together with duct tape, and paper-thin walls that absorbed my 3 a.m. typing. I made espresso for strangers in Union Square by morning and handed out resumes to publishers in the afternoon. At night, I wrote often with blistered hands and aching eyes, whispering plot twists to the ceiling while sirens wailed outside. Rejections came like weather. Constant. Cold. I didn't tear them up, I taped them to the wall. Wallpaper of failure or fuel, depending on the day. 8 months in, I got my first break, a low-paid assistant gig at a small literary magazine. I celebrated by buying real shampoo. That's where I met Victoria Sanchez. She was legend and thunder in the form of a woman, blunt bob, blazer sharp enough to slice, and an editing style that could dismantle egos in 5 syllables or less. She read one of my lunch break stories without warning. "You're rough," she said, "but raw in the right places. Don't waste it." That was her version of a hug. Under her, I stopped writing what I thought people wanted and started writing what hurt. She stripped my work down to the bones. "Less clever, more blood," she told me once, circling half a paragraph in red ink. Don't flinch. I didn't. My first published story came 2 years later in a respected literary journal. I stared at my byline like it might vanish, ran my fingers over the print like it was braille for belief. I told no one back home. Instead, I drank cheap wine on a rooftop with friends who knew what that byline meant. They screamed louder than I'd ever heard my mother speak my name. From there, it snowballed. Journals, reviews, agents. My first manuscript, a collection of linked short stories about fractured families and inherited silence, took 3 years. Beneath Silent Waters sold to a respected indie publisher. When the first copy arrived, I held it like a newborn. No one in Ohio even knew I was pregnant. The critics did what my family never had, they saw me. The New York Times called it a piercing debut. The New Yorker named me among writers to watch. Book clubs dissected my characters. Readers cried in my inbox. The irony? Strangers saw themselves in the family stories my own family had never bothered to read. I kept my pen name simple, Ashley Johnson. No middle names. No breadcrumbs. I wasn't hiding. I was just protecting the fragile space I'd carved out where I could finally breathe. My second book, The Weight of Unsaid Things, simmered into a bestseller, quiet at first, then explosive. Endorsements from writers I'd once idolized in college syllabi. Airport bookstores. Translations. I watched it unfold like it was happening to someone else. And still, my parents had no idea. They thought I edited brochures or formatted ebooks. But that night, back in Ohio, when Amanda typed my name into her phone and Google pulled back the curtain, everything changed. By 30, I was living two lives so cleanly divided they might as well have belonged to different people. There was the Ashley with a name that echoed in lecture halls and bookshop windows. A quiet force in the literary world. 2 novels, a shelf of awards, and guest lectures at places I'd once only dreamed of attending. I stood in auditoriums and heard strangers introduce me with reverence, reciting lines from reviews I'd memorized in private, but never dared to mention at home. Then there was their Ashley, the background daughter. The one with some job in publishing, vague enough to be dismissed, familiar enough to ignore. Every visit home sharpened the contrast until it ached. Still at that little magazine, my mother asked at Christmas, absently slicing into the roast. I'm working on other projects now, I answered, smooth as polished glass. That's nice, she said. Did I tell you Jerry just got promoted again? They're flying him out to Zurich. Conversation shifted. My presence blurred. 3 months before the night everything changed, I had flown to Los Angeles first class. A film option on my second novel had sparked interest from a major studio. I sat across from a producer whose name appeared in Oscar acceptance speeches, discussing casting and screenwrites while sipping champagne I didn't order. And yet, the thought of telling my family made me physically nauseous. Not out of modesty, but because I could already hear the words. Oh, that's nice, dear. Nice. As if it were a hobby I'd picked up between Pilates and Pinterest. So I stayed quiet. I kept the world I'd built locked behind a polished smile and polite vagueness. I learned how to compartmentalize until the compartments felt like coffins. Why do you keep going back? My friend Samantha asked after a Thanksgiving visit that left me hollowed out for days. Because if I didn't go back, they'd win. They'd succeed in turning me into the invisible thing they'd always believed I was. So I returned. And I excelled. And the chasm between who I was and who they thought I was widened until it felt like a fault line ready to split. It split the night my brother introduced us to Amanda. The house hadn't changed. The air inside still smelled like lemon polish and repressed emotion. My mother had planted fresh begonias by the walkway. She always made the house prettier when Jerry was coming home. A new BMW sat in the driveway. Amanda's, I assumed. I parked behind it and took a breath, a ritual I didn't realize I'd adopted until that moment. One inhale to armor myself, one exhale to disappear into the version of me they could tolerate. The door opened before I knocked. My father, still mild, still gentle, still wearing his company's coming sweater. Ashley, he said, giving me a hug that felt more like a handshake. They're in the living room. The house was a time capsule. Family portraits lined the foyer wall, but the most recent ones were all of Jerry. Promotions, vacations, smiling with dignitaries. Not a single image of me. Not one. I walked past them like a ghost through my own unfinished obituary. In the living room, my mother laughed. That brittle, hostess laugh, the one reserved for bridge tables and cocktail hours. Ashley, she said, voice tight with polite surprise. Finally, we were about to start without you. Traffic, I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Jerry stood and gave me a warm hug. He'd always been kind, the golden child who didn't ask to be golden. Ashley, come meet Amanda. Amanda rose from the couch with fluid grace. She had the kind of beauty that didn't feel rehearsed, simple, intelligent, confident. Her eyes met mine with curiosity, not judgment. I've heard so much about you, she said, shaking my hand. Jerry told me you live in Brooklyn. I love the city. All good things, I hope, I said, knowing they probably weren't. A soft snort came from my mother's direction. Shall we move to the dining room? She said. I've had the roast in for hours. The table was set with her best crystal and china, usually reserved for her social circle or Jerry's return visits. The seat assignments were telling. My father at the head, my mother at the other, Jerry and Amanda to one side, and me, as always, alone on the far end. The meal was textbook nostalgia. Roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, the mashed potatoes Jerry loved, homemade rolls. Celebration food. For his celebration. Amanda, tell us again how you two met, my mother prompted, pouring wine with just a hint of performance. I want Ashley to hear the story. Amanda smiled at Jerry. We met at a fundraiser for public education. He was speaking on behalf of his firm, and I was running PR for the nonprofit. Of course. Polished. Connected. The kind of match Janet had been manifesting since Jerry was 15. Dinner continued with the same practiced choreography, praise for Jerry's new condo, admiration for Amanda's career, a brief tangent about how the neighbor's daughter got into Yale. I was carving my roast when Amanda, casually sipping her wine, tilted her head and said, "Wait, your name's Ashley Johnson?" "Yes," I said, cautiously. She blinked. "Sorry, that just hit me. You're that Ashley Johnson?" "The writer." The room stilled. Knives paused mid-cut. Forks hovered in air. My mother squinted. "What are you talking about?" Amanda's phone was already in her hand, screen glowing. "I read The Weight of Unsaid Things last year. I loved it. I made my book club read it too. And then I read Beneath Silent Waters on the plane to Zurich." "Wait, this is you." I gave a small nod. "Yeah, that's me." Silence stretched. My father looked stunned. Jerry stared, mouth slightly open. My mother set her wine glass down too hard. Amanda glanced around, suddenly uncomfortable. "You guys didn't know?" My mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said, voice tight, "Ashley's always had a little interest in writing. I suppose we didn't realize she'd stuck with it." Amanda frowned. "But she's famous. Like, awards, press, everything." I let the silence hang, not rescuing anyone. My brother looked at me like I was someone entirely new. And just like that, the line between my two worlds vanished, not gently, but like glass shattering on tile. Everything they hadn't seen stood in the open now, and none of them knew what to do with it. "We met at a charity auction for the Children's Hospital," Amanda said, her voice warm, polished. "I was organizing the event. Jerry was there representing his firm. He outbid everyone on a weekend sailing trip, even though he told me earlier he gets seasick." She laughed, the kind of laugh that draws people in. "I figured anyone that determined deserved at least one dinner," she added, smiling at him. "Best investment I ever made," Jerry said, threading his fingers through hers. My mother beamed like she'd landed a royal match. "And Amanda's family is from Shaker Heights," she added, her tone a subtle trumpet. "Her father's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Cleveland Clinic." Translation: wealth, prestige, the kind of bloodline Janet Johnson measured worth by. Amanda turned to me then, still gracious, still trying. "Jerry mentioned you work in publishing in New York. That sounds fascinating." I opened my mouth, but my mother waved her wine glass in the air. "She works with books. A little magazine or something," she said. "Isn't that right, dear?" I held back the impulse to correct her. "It's a publishing house," I said evenly. "I work with authors." Amanda brightened. "That must be so interesting. What kind of books do you?" "She's always been a bookworm," my mother cut in, laughing like it was charming. "That summer she barely left her room? Always reading. We practically had to drag her outside." The conversation pivoted, like it always did, away from me, toward wedding plans, country clubs, cake tiers, and floral arrangements. I chewed my food and said little, accustomed to disappearing while physically present. Background character. The familiar role. But Amanda kept looking at me, not in pity, but something closer to curiosity. She wasn't letting me vanish. "We're still figuring out the bridal party," she said, her eyes on me again. "But I'd really love for you to be one of my bridesmaids, Ashley. I don't have sisters, and it would mean a lot." I blinked. That I didn't see coming. "I'd be honored," I said. And meant it. "Well," my mother interjected, her smile tight as piano wire, "that's if Ashley can find time in her busy New York schedule. Publishing is so demanding, after all." "Mom," Jerry said quietly. A warning. Amanda, sensing the tension, tried to redirect. "Are you working on anything now? Any books we should look out for?" There it was, the opening. A clean, bright doorway I could finally step through. I could say it. The awards. The film option. The reviews, the tours, the cities where strangers cried in front of me. But years of practiced minimization had carved deep grooves in my voice. "Just the usual projects," I said. "Nothing special." And my mother, like clockwork, took the cue. "She's just a nobody with some office job," she said with a laugh. "Not everyone can be as ambitious as you and Jerry." The words hit like ice water down my spine. I glanced at my father, eyes down, chewing like nothing had happened. Jerry shifted uncomfortably. Amanda looked, startled. I felt it again, that familiar sting. But this time, someone else was watching. Amanda dipped her eyes to her phone under the table. Subtle. Fast. Her thumbs moved. My mother continued droning about cake flavors and guest lists, but Amanda was scrolling. Her brows furrowed, then lifted, then knit together again. I knew that look. I'd seen it before in readings after signings. It was the look people wore when they connected dots. Then she froze. The silence around the table went unnoticed, buried beneath my mother's commentary on tiered cakes and signature cocktails. But Amanda looked up from her phone and stared directly at me. And something in her expression had changed. "Excuse me," she said suddenly, cutting off my mother mid-sentence. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need to ask something." All eyes turned to her. She turned to me. "Ashley, are you the Ashley Johnson? The author?" A breath caught in my throat. Not a gasp. Just an exhale that forgot where to go. My mother blinked. "What are you talking about?" Amanda held up her phone. A glowing screen. I recognized it instantly, my Penguin Random House author page. "Ashley Johnson," she read. "Beneath Silent Waters. The Weight of Unsaid Things. National Book Critics Circle Award. Penn/Faulkner." She looked at me, her voice hushed with awe. "This is you, right?" The photo matches. Jerry leaned in to see the screen. He scrolled. His jaw dropped. "Holy shit," he said, stunned. "Ashley, this is you?" My father froze mid-bite. My mother reached across the table and snatched the phone from Amanda's hand. There it was. The moment. I should have felt triumph. I should have felt powerful. Instead, I felt naked. My two worlds, once meticulously partitioned, had collided in the worst possible theater, my childhood dining room, beneath the weight of chandeliers and unspoken history. And suddenly, everyone was watching. "This has to be some kind of mistake," my mother said, her voice brittle as glass. But even she didn't believe it. She was staring at the screen like it might explode. "There are probably dozens of Ashley Johnsons out there." "No mistake," Amanda said calmly, retrieving her phone. She continued reading, unaware, or maybe just undeterred by the quiet chaos unraveling around her. Ashley Johnson's writing has been compared to Joan Didion and Alice Munro. Her debut collection was called breathtakingly assured by the New York Times, and her novel spent 18 weeks on the bestseller list. She looked up, eyes shining. "I read your book. Last year. My book club chose it. I had no idea that was you. It was incredible." The air in the room changed, a sudden pressure drop, like before a storm. My mother's face had drained of color. My father was leaning closer now, squinting at Amanda's phone like it might provide instructions on how to parent a stranger. Amanda kept going, each line another crack in the facade. Optioned by Paramount, production begins next year, featured in the New Yorker's 40 Under 40. Jerry stared at me. He wasn't angry. He looked like someone discovering a secret door in a house he thought he'd known all his life. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked softly, confused, maybe even hurt. I drew in a breath. My chest felt tight. "I did," I said. "I tried." My mother scoffed, waving her hand like I'd brought up some ancient inconvenience. "That's ridiculous. You never told us you were some famous writer. We would have remembered that." "No," I said, my voice steady now, rising like heat from long-smothered coals. "I told you when the Atlantic published my first story. I called home. You changed the subject to Jerry's new car." My father looked down. My mother's mouth pressed into a thin, bloodless line. "When my first book came out, I mailed you signed copies. With a note. It arrived before Christmas, 3 years ago." My father blinked. "I don't remember that. You wouldn't. It was unopened. Sitting in the guest room closet. I saw it during my visit. Still in the envelope." Amanda shifted in her seat, finally aware of the family tension she had unintentionally detonated. Her eyes flicked to Jerry, then back to me. Her voice was quiet, respectful. "Your books are stunning, Ashley. The way you write about family, the unspoken rules, the things people never say out loud, it's so honest. Honestly, some of those scenes, they felt familiar." She didn't say the word autobiographical. She didn't need to. I held her gaze and nodded, once. Not a confession, just an acknowledgement of the truth behind the fiction. "May I see that?" my father asked, his voice tentative. Amanda handed him the phone. He fumbled for his glasses, then studied the screen in silence. After a moment, he spoke, half to himself. "National Book Critics Circle Award. Penn/Faulkner. That's impressive. Very impressive." "It's one of the most respected awards in the country," Amanda added, trying to help. "Only the best get it." My mother was quiet for a moment too long, as if trying to bend reality into something she could still control. "If you're so successful," she said finally, her voice edged with skepticism, "why do you still live in that little apartment in Brooklyn? Why don't you drive a nicer car?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly her. Measuring worth in square footage and parking spots. "My apartment isn't small, Mom. It's a 2-bedroom in Park Slope. And I take the subway because I live in New York. A car is more hassle than help." "There's even a Wikipedia page," Amanda murmured, scrolling again. "Oh, look. Here's a video of you accepting the PN/Faulkner." She held up the phone. There I was, projected from her screen in an evening gown, standing at a podium, thanking my editor and the writers who came before me. The footage looked surreal against the backdrop of my mother's chandelier and the roast beef congealing on our plates. I watched the expressions shift. My father stunned, then quietly proud. Jerry, a mix of awe and guilt. My mother, unraveling. Her worldview, her hierarchy, everything she thought she understood about her children was disintegrating before her eyes. "All this time," Jerry said slowly, "while we thought you were just..." He stopped. There was no graceful end to that sentence. "Just a nobody," I supplied. I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah," he said. All this time, the dinner that had been planned as a celebration of his engagement had transformed into a slow, silent implosion. The balance of power in our family, the unspoken rules of who mattered and who didn't, had cracked in half. Amanda, ever the peacemaker, tried to lift the mood. "Well," she said, half laughing, "I feel like I'm having dinner with a celebrity. Honestly, Ashley, I recommended your book to half my coworkers." I nodded politely, but inside I was still spinning. This moment, the one I'd imagined in midnight fantasies and silent subway rides, was finally here. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like being exposed. Seen, yes, but not necessarily understood. And definitely not forgiven. My mother's voice sliced through the stunned quiet like glass cracking under pressure. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding. Ashley would have told us if she were actually successful. She turned to me then, and the shift in her expression was immediate, from confusion to suspicion, as if I'd orchestrated a con rather than a career. Why would you hide something like this from your own family unless you were making it up? There it was. This sting. Not just disbelief, accusation. Not, why didn't we know, but why didn't you tell us better? I didn't hide anything, I said, steady despite the tremble crawling up my spine. You just never listened. That's absurd, she snapped. We always supported your little writing hobby. That word burned in my throat like bile. Hobby, I echoed. That's what you think this is? Jerry finally spoke up. Amanda just showed us her publisher's page, Mom. There's a Wikipedia entry. Reviews in the Times. This isn't a blog in someone's basement. My father, still hunched over Amanda's phone, looked up, a slow dawning on his face. There's a photo of you, on stage at some big awards thing, with a Pulitzer winner beside you. It was the PN/Faulkner, Amanda added. Very prestigious. He blinked. Why wouldn't you share this with us? Unlike my mother's accusation, his question was quiet. Real. And it deserved an answer. I tried, I said, eyes locked on him. When I got my first book deal, I called. I was ecstatic. Mom answered, said she couldn't talk. She was heading to Jerry's softball game. She said she'd call back. My father glanced at my mother, who suddenly found the tablecloth fascinating. She never did. I pushed forward, years of silence cracking open. When the book launched, I mailed you both signed copies. I invited you to the reading in Manhattan. I included a card that said, "This is one of the biggest moments of my life. I'd love for you to be there." You didn't respond. We were probably busy, my mother muttered, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. You can't expect us to drop everything. Drop everything for what? I cut in. For your daughter's dream? The thing you dismissed every time I brought it up? Because you never missed a single one of Jerry's events. Not one. Jerry shifted uncomfortably. Amanda reached for his hand. Eyes sympathetic but watchful. I'm not blaming you, Jerry, I said, gentler now. You didn't ask for any of this. But the rest of us lived in your shadow whether you wanted us there or not. When I won my first major award, I went on, I called from the hotel. Still in my gown. Dad, you answered. Said Mom was asleep. You were watching the Cavs game. You told me to call tomorrow. I did. No one picked up. My father's face turned a soft, devastated red. I didn't realize, he whispered. I didn't know it was important. I laughed once, not out of humor but disbelief. Did you ever Google my name? Even once, in all these years? Did you ever ask what I really did in New York? My mother's lips tightened like a wound closing. You were always so dramatic, Ashley. If you were really successful, why didn't you make sure we knew? Because every time I tried, you changed the subject to Jerry. Every single time. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? To be ignored in plain sight. Amanda cleared her throat, quiet but cutting through the noise. Your novel, she said softly, the one about the youngest daughter whose art is only discovered after she leaves home, was that based on you? Before I could speak, my mother jumped in, brittle and sharp. Are you saying you wrote about us? You aired private family matters to the public? How could you? I write fiction, I said, each word a scalpel. My characters aren't you. But yes, I wrote about what it feels like to be invisible in your own home. Jerry rubbed the back of his neck, voice low. I didn't know you felt like that. Would you have listened if I'd told you? I asked gently. You were too busy being perfect. That wasn't your fault. But it shaped everything. My father, still holding Amanda's phone, looked up again. His eyes were different now, not confused, not even sad. Just quiet. Some of these reviews say your work deals with emotional abandonment. With conditional love. Is that really how you see us? The silence that followed was heavy. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I finally did. I see you as parents who loved one child so loudly there was no room to hear the other, I said. So I stopped trying to earn what I was never going to get. I built a life without needing your approval. And now, here we are. My mother stood suddenly, her chair scraping the floor like a scream. I need to clear dessert, she said. Her voice cracked. No one had touched their plates. Janet, my father said, and for the first time, there was steel in his voice. Sit down. This matters. What matters, she hissed, is that Ashley has been nursing grudges and writing books about how we failed her. Mom, Jerry said, quietly but firmly, you did just call her a nobody. She froze. Amanda looked down. Even she winced. I exhaled slowly, trying to hold steady. I never said you were bad parents, I clarified. But yes, I was hurt. And instead of confronting you, I did what writers do. I turned it into something. I made it mean something. So you get famous, my mother snapped, while making us look like villains. No one knows who you are, I said calmly. I've never used our names. I've never said it was autobiographical. I paused. If people see themselves in the story, that's not on me. That's guilt talking, not the text. The room was still. Everything inside it, years, memories, wounds had surfaced. And no one quite knew what to do with them. The room had fallen into a deep, unsettled quiet. My mother remained frozen in place, clutching the dessert plates like armor. My father stared into space, glasses folded in his hand, as if trying to reassemble the version of reality he'd trusted for too long. Jerry and Amanda sat still, caught between discomfort and dawning awareness. For a moment, I thought about leaving, standing up, walking out, letting the silence win. But I'd spent too many years disappearing to vanish now. Something kept me grounded. The same quiet resilience that had pushed me through years of rejection letters and late nights at a wobbly desk. The part of me that refused to stop writing even when no one cared. I never wanted to have this conversation, I said at last, breaking the silence. But maybe it's time. Maybe it should have happened years ago. They looked at me, wary, like I might explode or unravel. But I didn't. I've built a life I'm proud of, I said. A career that fulfills me. And I did it without your support. Without your approval. That doesn't take anything away from Jerry's success. There was always room for both of us, you just refused to see it. My father removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes like he was trying to wipe the past clean. I don't know what to say, he said quietly. I'm sorry we missed so much. It landed like a weight on the table, heavy and real. The first apology I had ever heard in this house that didn't come wrapped in an excuse. My mother finally sat down again. Her movements were slower now. Less sure. Why didn't you make us understand? She asked. But this time the edge was gone. Her voice was tired, vulnerable, almost lost. It wasn't my job to make you see me, I said gently. It was your job to look. Parents are supposed to notice both their children, not just the one who fits the script. Jerry reached across the table and rested his hand on mine. I didn't see it either, he said. I should have. I'm sorry, Ashley. Tears pressed against the back of my eyes, sharp, sudden. I blinked them away. Amanda spoke up, her voice soft. For what it's worth, your writing is extraordinary. It's changed people. That's not something many of us get to say about what we do. The room stayed still, quieter now, not with tension, but with something else. Recognition. The brittle shell of the family dynamic had cracked wide open. What would grow in the raw space that followed, I didn't know. But for the first time, I felt seen. Dinner limped forward, not quite recovered. The chocolate mousse went mostly untouched. Conversations stumbled in halting steps. Amanda, undeterred, gently steered us into safer waters, asking about my writing process, my routine, my next project. I hesitated at first, but she was sincere. She wasn't trying to flatter me, she was curious. I'm working on a new novel, I said, voice cautious at first. It's about sisters separated young, raised in different homes, who reconnect as adults only to discover their lives were eerily parallel all along. That sounds beautiful, Amanda said. Do you have a release date? If I hit my deadline, spring next year. My mother pushed her mousse with her spoon. Then, awkwardly, I suppose we'll wait for the movie version. It was an attempt at humor. Fragile and ill-timed. I considered ignoring it, but instead I offered something unexpected. If you'd like, I said, I could send you the galleys when they're ready. The words hung in the air, an offering, not of forgiveness, but of possibility. My father cleared his throat. I'd like that, he said. I want to read all of your books. I'm sorry I didn't, before. Jerry nodded. Same here. I can't believe my little sister's a literary star and I didn't even know it. I smiled faintly. I'm not exactly famous. Amanda laughed. Tell that to the New York Times. Or your Wikipedia page. After dessert, we drifted into the living room. My mother excused herself to the kitchen, mumbling about the dishes. But I knew she just needed a way to retreat, to breathe. Amanda touched Jerry's arm. Why don't you help your mom? Grateful for the excuse, he nodded and disappeared. My father, muttering something about the Indians' game, vanished into his den. Suddenly, it was just me and Amanda, the outsider who had cracked open everything I'd spent years walling off. She turned to me, face apologetic. I didn't mean to cause drama, she said. I had no idea they didn't know. I assumed. It's okay, I said. Honestly, it needed to happen. She hesitated. Then, I recognized your name. When Jerry said you were a writer in New York, I thought, what if? But when no one mentioned anything, I assumed I was wrong. So the Google search was intentional? Amanda gave a sheepish smile. Your mom called you a nobody. I knew she had to be wrong. I wanted them to see. I didn't think it would unravel the whole dinner. But it did, I said. And maybe that's good. They'd never have believed me on my own. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Jerry returned, looking subdued. Mom's processing, he said. Dad's talking to her. She's not angry. Just shaken. I didn't mean to hurt them, I said quietly. I know. Jerry looked down, then back at me. I'm the one who owes you an apology. I never asked. I never paid attention. You were a kid too, I said. It wasn't your job to notice. It was still wrong, he replied. All those years, I thought I was the only one succeeding. I didn't realize you were out there doing something incredible. Alone. I didn't answer. Because there was no tidy ending here. No tearful hug. No sitcom resolution. Just three people in a quiet room, slowly realizing who they were to each other, and who they weren't. But it was a start. Amanda squeezed Jerry's hand gently. The thing is, he said, turning back to me, I always thought you were the lucky one. I blinked. What? Mom and Dad were all over me, all the time, every grade, every test, every decision. The pressure was constant. But you seemed free, like they'd stopped hovering. I stared at him, stunned. All those years I'd envied the spotlight, the celebration, the certainty of being the favorite, and he'd looked at me and seen freedom. The flip side of their attention, to him, had looked like liberty. He hadn't known what it meant to be overlooked, to scream silently from the edges. I nodded slowly. I never realized. The freedom felt like invisibility. He looked at me, eyes open in a way they'd never quite been. I see that now. Then, more softly, maybe we can start over. As adults, I want to know your real life, Ashley, not the polite version you spoon out at Thanksgiving. His offer hit deeper than I expected. It wasn't just kindness. It was accountability. I'd like that, I said. At that moment, our father appeared in the doorway. His face was drawn, tired, but not cold. Your mother needs some time, he said. This was a lot for her. He sank into his usual armchair, the same chair he'd sat in for every holiday, every football game, every unspoken disappointment. I've been reading your author page, he added, gesturing to his phone. The reviews. The interviews. The awards. I had no idea, Ashley. I know, Dad. No, you don't. His voice cracked. We failed you. I failed you. You tried to tell us who you were, and we didn't hear it. I'm ashamed it took a stranger to show me my daughter. Amanda winced slightly at the word stranger, but said nothing. It's not too late, I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. To listen. To care. If you want to. I do, he said firmly. We do. Your mother too, even if she can't find the words right now. The evening wound down sooner than planned. Emotion had worn us all thin. As I gathered my coat, Amanda pulled me into a warm, genuine hug. Not the dinner I expected, she said with a rueful smile. But I'm so glad I got to meet the real Ashley Johnson. Jerry hugged me next, longer than he ever had. This doesn't fix everything, he said into my shoulder. But it's a start, right? I nodded. It's a start. At the door, my father paused. His voice was softer now. Will you come back next Sunday? For dinner. I'll have finished your first book by then. Maybe we can talk about it. The invitation hit like a tide. I'll be there, I said. My mother didn't come out to say goodbye. I didn't take it personally. She needed time. Her entire scaffolding had shifted, the roles she assigned us, the narrative she clung to. It wouldn't crumble in one night, but maybe it had cracked. As I drove back to the hotel, I felt something loosen inside me. Not absolution, not yet, but space. As if the version of me that had existed in this family's margins was finally being acknowledged. Hope bloomed cautiously. Fragile, but real. 3 months later, a package arrived on my Brooklyn doorstep. The return address was Westlake, Ohio. Inside were new copies of my books, not the ones I'd mailed years ago, still in their shrink-wrap silence. These were recently bought, and in the front flap of Beneath Silent Waters was a note, in my father's neat, accountant's handwriting. Ashley, I've read this twice now. Once to understand the story, and once to hear you. I'm sorry it took me so long to listen. Your words are beautiful. They matter. You matter. Love. Dad. I ran my fingers over the indentations his pen had left in the paper, and something inside me softened. Not forgiveness, exactly, but the ache of something beginning to thaw. My phone rang. Jerry. Hey, he said. Did Dad's package arrive? It did, I said. Just now. It's a lot. He ordered those books the day after that dinner, Jerry said. Read them all. Mom too, though you know she'll never admit it out loud. We spoke often now, real conversations, not holiday scripts. He asked about my writing. He asked, and waited for the answer. How's the new book coming? Just finished the second draft, I said. My editor says it might be the strongest thing I've done. That's amazing, he said. Actually, that's why I'm calling. Amanda and I were wondering if you'd do a reading at our engagement party. I blinked. A reading? Of my work. Yeah, something that matters to you. Just a few minutes. We'd love it. You're sure? It's your day. I don't want to hijack it. He laughed. Ashley, I spent most of my life not really knowing my sister. Now that I do, I want everyone else to know you too. The real you. Not the placeholder we invented to make dinner conversations easier. His words hit like sunlight through fog. Then yes, I said. I'd be honored. Oh, one more thing, he added. Mom's been changing the seating chart. She wants you at the head table. With us. And Jess's parents. The words hung there, almost surreal. My usual seat, at the edge near the kitchen, part of the scenery, was no more. That little change meant everything. Is Mom okay with that? I asked. Jerry sighed. She's trying. That's all I can promise. But she's reading, Ashley. That's something. It was. For the first time, she was reading me. Not scanning. Not skimming. Reading. Not forgiveness. But maybe the first sentence of something new. She's trying, Ashley, Jerry said. It's not easy for her to admit how wrong she's been all these years. But Dad's different now. I've never seen him stand up to her like this. The image of my father, long passive, long silent, finally drawing a line on my behalf stirred something unexpected in me. Not triumph, exactly. Something quieter. Something like grace. Amanda's been great too, he added. She made Mom join her book club. Guess what they're reading next month? I laughed. Let me guess, Beneath Silent Waters? She's nervous, he admitted. She keeps saying she won't know what to say or will misinterpret something. I think she's finally realizing what she missed. After we hung up, I sat quietly with my father's handwritten notes still beside me. The words had started to soften the sediment of old hurt, not erase it, but displace it just enough to let something new grow in its place. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a wound. It felt like soil. And my family, awkwardly, haltingly, was learning how to replant what we'd buried. Even my mother. Last week, she'd called. Not to argue or deflect, just to talk. She mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that she'd told her bridge club about my books. Madison Powell's daughter teaches English at Ohio State, she said. Apparently, she assigned your novel in her syllabus this semester. Madison was impressed. There'd been pride in her voice. Thin, cautious pride, but there. She was beginning to discover that my success could reflect well on her, not just challenge her. It wasn't unconditional recognition, but it was something. The engagement party came quicker than I expected. Arriving early, I pulled into my parents' driveway, the same one I'd trudged up with dread so many times before, but today, something felt different. The house looked the same, but I didn't. Amanda met me at the door and hugged me like family. I'm so glad you're here. Come see the setup. She led me to the backyard, where string lights hung from tree to tree, glowing gently against the dusk. A small podium stood near the patio, tucked between tables of champagne and tiered desserts. For your reading, she said. Some of my family are huge fans. My cousin Abigail teaches your short stories in her American Lit class. Inside, my mother was giving orders to the caterers with her usual precision, but when she saw me, something shifted. She didn't stiffen. She smiled. Ashley. Good. You're here, she said. I've put you at table 1. With us and the Clarks. The main table. That had never happened before. I've told the bartender to have champagne ready after your reading, she added, a little awkwardly. I figured, well, it seemed appropriate. Thanks, Mom, I said. Nothing more. I didn't want to scare her back into silence. She hesitated. Your hair looks nice. The length suits you. I almost smiled. It was a compliment, and in my mother's language, that was a beginning. My father appeared, beaming. Ashley. I just finished The Weight of Unsaid Things. That scene where she confronts her mentor on stage. That was extraordinary. Honestly. We talked for several minutes about the book, its structure, its themes, like two readers, not just father and daughter. He saw the work now, and through it he saw me. As guests arrived, I noticed the change. My mother didn't say, "This is Ashley. She lives in New York." She said, "This is Ashley, our daughter, the author." No qualifiers. No apologies. Amanda and Jerry kept drawing me into conversations, making space for me as if I belonged there not as an afterthought, but as a center of gravity in their lives. And for the first time, I believed it was genuine. When it came time for the reading, Amanda's father introduced me. He listed my achievements with an ease I'd never heard at home before. I stepped up to the podium with a strange mix of emotion, fear, pride, vulnerability. I'd chosen a passage about a woman reclaiming her voice after years of silencing. It felt right. As I read, I let myself look up once, just long enough to see my mother sitting very still, her eyes wet. My father's hand rested lightly on hers. When I finished, the applause was loud and real. And in the midst of it, my mother stood up, just for a second, and clapped. Later, as the party began to wind down, she found me talking with Amanda's mother. Your reading was beautiful, she said. Her voice was lower than usual, almost uncertain. I never knew you could write like that. You never asked, I said softly. Not in anger, just truth. She nodded. Slowly. I'm asking now. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't everything. But it was enough. Better late than never, I said. The next morning, I drove back to Brooklyn. The sun cut low across the highway. My mother's voice still echoed in my ears. Not just her words, but her tone. Less armor. Less judgment. More curiosity. At a rest stop outside Scranton, my phone buzzed. Jerry. Dad just ordered your books for everyone in his golf club. Mom's freaking out about the language they'll read. She's convinced someone will write a letter. I laughed out loud in my car, alone but lighter. Progress, I typed back. Strange, imperfect progress. And that was the truth. I hadn't written to be praised. I hadn't written for their permission. I'd written because I had something to say, because the stories had been clawing at my chest for years. But to finally be seen, not by critics or strangers or industry circles, but by the people who'd taught me silence, that was something else. That was the epilogue I didn't know I needed. The invisible daughter had stood at the podium, read her truth aloud, and was met with applause not because she had changed who she was, but because they had finally opened their eyes. The nobody had always been somebody. And this quiet, hard-won recognition was not the end. It was the beginning of the life I'd been writing toward all along.